One night, Elias was driving home from work in his old truck. The rain was coming down hard, making the streets shiny and dark. He was tired. His hands, rough from fixing broken machines all day, gripped the steering wheel. He was an engineer, but for a long time now, his job was to repair whatever people brought him. Toasters, fans, sometimes a neighbor's TV. It was honest work, and it paid for the small house he shared with his 10-year-old daughter, Lily. It was a simple life, but it was theirs. He turned onto a street lined with fancy bars and clubs. Their bright lights glowed through the rainy windows of his truck. It was a part of town he usually avoided. As he slowed for a red light, his headlights swept over the sidewalk. That's when he saw her. A woman was slumped on the wet ground, leaning against a brick wall of a bar. She was dressed in a beautiful silver dress, now soaked and dirty. One of her high-heeled shoes was missing. Cars filled with well-dressed people drove right past her. Nobody stopped. Elias didn't think. He pulled his truck over and jumped out into the rain. The cold water soaked through his jacket immediately. He knelt down beside her. "Miss," he said, his voice gentle but firm, "you can't stay here. You'll get sick." She looked up at him. Her eyes were cloudy and confused. She was very beautiful, but her face was twisted with sadness. She tried to speak, but her words were a messy slur. He left me," she mumbled, the smell of strong alcohol on her breath. Elias felt a deep pang of pity. He knew what it was to feel lost, though his own loss was different. He had lost his wife 3 years ago. Now his world was only for Lily. But seeing this woman, so alone and vulnerable, stirred his protective nature. "Come on," he said softly. "Let's get you somewhere safe and dry." She was too weak to walk properly. He put one of her arms around his shoulders and helped her to her feet. He half carried her to his truck, opening the passenger door and carefully helping her inside. He fastened his seatbelt around her, making sure she was secure. Inside the truck, her expensive perfume filled the air. It was a sweet, flowery scent that didn't belong next to the smells of his old truck. Oil, old coffee, and damp work clothes. It was like 2 different worlds had suddenly collided. He looked at her as she shivered in the seat. He knew he couldn't take her to a hotel. She was in no state to be alone. He made a quick decision. The only safe place was his home. He would give her the bed for the night, and he would sleep on the couch. As he drove towards his neighborhood of small, modest houses, he thought of Lily, hopefully fast asleep in her bed. He hoped she wouldn't be frightened to find a stranger in their home. The woman beside him had fallen asleep, her head resting against the window. The rain streaked down the glass beside her face, like tears. Elias didn't know it then, but this simple act of kindness on a rainy night was about to change everything. He was bringing home more than just a stranger. He was bringing a new future into his and his daughter's life. The woman was light in his arms, a fragile weight as Elias carried her through the small, cluttered living room. He pushed open the door to his bedroom, the only real bedroom in the house, and laid her gently on the quilt his wife had made years ago. Her silver dress was a stark, foreign splash of color against the simple, worn fabric. He knew the couch in the living room would be his bed for the night. It was old and lumpy, but it didn't matter. What mattered was making sure this stranger was safe and comfortable. He worked quietly, his movements practiced and sure. He went to the small bathroom and wet a clean cloth with warm water. Returning, he sat on the edge of the bed and carefully wiped the smudged makeup and grime from her face. Her skin was soft under his work-roughened fingers. A small shadow moved in the hallway. His daughter, Lily, stood in her pajamas, one hand rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Papa? Who's that?" she whispered. "It's okay, Lilybug. This lady wasn't feeling well, and she had nowhere to go, so we're going to let her sleep here tonight." Lily padded quietly into the room, her curiosity overcoming her sleepiness. She stood beside her father and looked at the beautiful, sleeping woman. "She's like a princess from a storybook," she whispered, her voice full of wonder. "In a way she is, but even princesses get lost sometimes." He finished tucking the blankets around the woman, his strong, calloused hands pulling the quilt up to her chin with a surprising tenderness. These were the same hands that spent their days wrestling with stubborn engines and delicate wiring, but now they performed a different kind of repair, the offering of peace and safety. He then placed a glass of water and 2 aspirin tablets on the small bedside table where the woman would see them when she woke. It was the same ritual he followed whenever Lily was sick. "Come on, sweetheart," he said to his daughter, putting an arm around her small shoulders. "Let's hard asleep." He turned off the main light, leaving the door open just a crack so a sliver of light from the hallway could guide her if she woke confused. Back in the living room, Elias settled on the worn couch, pulling an old Afghan over himself. Lily, instead of going back to her own bed, climbed onto the couch with him and curled into his side. She rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady, familiar beat of his heart. "Will she be okay, Papa?" Lily asked, her voice small in the dark room. "Yes, Lilybug. She's safe now. That's the most important thing." He held his daughter close, the protector of both the child in his arms and the stranger in his bed. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but inside the small, humble house, there was a sanctuary, built not from money, but from simple, human kindness. It was a quiet fortress against the coldness of the world.
Isabella Thorne's eyes fluttered open to a world she did not know. The first thing she saw was a crack in the window pane, a jagged line that caught the morning sun and sent a prism of light dancing across the wall. She blinked, her head throbbing a dull, steady rhythm. This was not her bedroom. Her bedroom had a perfect floor-to-ceiling view of the city, not a cracked window looking out on a small, untended garden. She pushed herself up on her elbows, the simple bed creaking beneath her. The room was small and humble. The walls were a faded color, but they were brought to life by dozens of a child's drawings. Pictures of smiling suns, lopsided houses, and stick-figure families were taped up with care. The air smelled of strong coffee and something else, the simple, honest scent of frying eggs. It was a world away from the silent, catered breakfasts in her penthouse. A sudden, cold wave of panic washed over her. Where was she? The memories of the previous night flooded back in broken, painful pieces. The fight with Mark, his cold, dismissive words, the bar, the whiskey, the feeling of the cold, wet pavement against her cheek. She looked down and saw she was still wearing the ruined silver dress, now wrinkled and smelling of rain. Just as her breath began to quicken, the bedroom door opened slowly. The man from the rain stood there, his frame filling the doorway. He looked tired, but his eyes were kind. In his hands he held a simple wooden tray. On it was a plate of eggs, a slice of toast, and a mug of steaming coffee. He moved carefully, as if not to startle her. Peering from behind his legs was the little girl she vaguely remembered from the blur of last night. She had bright, curious eyes and 2 messy pigtails. She offered a small, gap-toothed grin, half hiding behind her father. "Good morning," he said, his voice a low, calm sound that seemed to settle the racing in her heart. He placed the tray gently on her lap. "I'm Elias. This is my daughter, Lily." He looked at her, and there was no judgment in his gaze, only a quiet, steady concern. "You're safe here," he said, and the words felt like an anchor in her swirling confusion. In that moment, a hot shame washed over Isabella, so intense it made her cheeks burn. She was Isabella Thorne, the CEO of Thorne Global. She commanded boardrooms, made decisions worth billions, and lived in a world of polished marble and private drivers. But yesterday, all that power and money had meant nothing. She had been reduced to a weeping, helpless mess on a sidewalk, saved not by a bodyguard or an assistant, but by the kindness of a poor, struggling man. She looked at the simple breakfast tray, at the little girl's hopeful smile, and at the man who asked for nothing in return. This raw, uncomplicated compassion was something she had never truly known. In her world, kindness was often a transaction. Here, in this small room with the cracked window, it was simply given, a gift from one human being to another. Bella, she asked them to call her that, stayed through the morning. The initial stiff awkwardness began to dissolve in the warm, simple rhythm of their home. Lily, with the unguarded affection of a child, became her shadow, showing Bella her favorite books and drawings. Elias moved through the small house with a quiet competence, making a second round of coffee without any fuss. As she sat on the worn sofa, a wave of clarity cut through the last of her whiskey-induced haze. The memories, sharp and painful, returned with a vengeance. Mark's face, not angry but bored, as he told her their engagement was a strategic miscalculation. The coldness in his eyes as he said he'd found someone less demanding. The feeling of her world, so carefully controlled, shattering into a million pieces. That was the pain that had driven her to the bar, to the bottle, to the cold pavement. She looked around. Lily was now coloring quietly at the table, her small face a picture of concentration. From the kitchen she could hear the soft clatter of Elias washing the breakfast dishes. There was no grand strategy here, no hidden agenda, just a man and his daughter. The quiet hum of their existence was a balm to her troubled soul. The sharp edges of her heartbreak seemed to soften in this humble, unassuming space. Seeking a way to ground herself, she noticed a basket of clean laundry on a chair. "Let me help with that," she offered. Elias looked slightly surprised but nodded gratefully. So she sat and folded a stack of his t-shirts and Lily's tiny socks. Her hands, which usually signed documents for skyscrapers, carefully smoothed the fabric. This simple act felt more meaningful than any boardroom victory. It was a tangible contribution to a life, a household. It was real. When the time came to leave, a profound reluctance settled over her. She thanked them, her voice thick with emotion. "I can never repay you for your kindness," she said to Elias. He simply shook his head. "No repayment needed. Just glad you're okay." Using her phone, she ordered a ride. As she waited on the curb, the sight of the small, slightly peeling house felt more like home than anywhere she had known. She was driven away, but her heart remained behind. Her destination wasn't her office or a hotel, but her penthouse. The elevator opened to a silence that was heavy and absolute. Her heels clicked on the polished marble, the sound echoing in the vast, empty space. This was not a home. It was a beautiful, cold cage. The memory of Mark's betrayal hung in the sterile air, poisoning it. She walked to her dressing room, a space larger than Elias's entire living room, filled with designer clothes that felt like costumes from a life she no longer wanted. She found a small suitcase and packed simple jeans, soft cotton t-shirts, and a warm sweater. Clothes for a real life. She left the diamonds and silk behind. Picking up her phone, she called her assistant. "Charles," she said, her voice firm, "I am taking an indefinite personal leave. Handle all urgent matters. Do not contact me." She ended the call. Looking around the silent, opulent prison one last time, she picked up her single suitcase. She wasn't Isabella Thorne here. Here she was just a title, a fortune, a person to be used. But in that small house, she was just Bella. She was the woman who folded laundry and made a little girl laugh. She was the woman a kind man had looked at with concern, not greed. She needed more of that peace, that simple, uncomplicated humanity. She was going back to the world Elias had built, a world where no one knew she was a billionaire, and where she could finally let her wounded heart begin to heal.
When Bella returned to the small house, a single suitcase in one hand and a bag of groceries in the other, it was Lily who saw her first. The little girl's face lit up with pure, uncomplicated joy. "Bella, you came back!" she shouted, rushing to the door and wrapping her arms around Bella's legs in a tight hug that felt more like home than anything Bella had ever known. Elias appeared behind his daughter, wiping his hands on an old rag. A look of pleasant surprise softened his tired features. "We didn't expect to see you again so soon," he said, his voice warm with genuine welcome. "I hope it's all right," Bella said, feeling a sudden shyness she hadn't experienced in years. "I brought a few things." She handed him the grocery bag, filled with fresh fruits, good coffee, and ingredients for a proper meal. Then she produced a beautifully wrapped box of expensive chocolates for Lily. The little girl's eyes widened as if she'd been given a treasure chest, her gasp of delight filling the small entryway. That evening, after the groceries were put away and Lily was finally asleep, a comfortable silence settled between them in the living room. The only sounds were the gentle ticking of an old clock and the soft hum of the refrigerator. Elias looked at her, his expression gentle but curious. "Bella, if it's okay to ask, who are you? What happened that night that put you in such a bad way?" Bella looked down at her hands, a shadow passing over her face. She smiled, but it was a sad, quiet smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm just Bella, a simple girl whose heart was broken by someone she trusted. It's not something I can talk about right now, if that's okay. The memories are still too fresh." Elias watched her, seeing the genuine pain in her eyes and recognizing that particular hurt, the kind that words couldn't easily fix. He nodded slowly, his gaze kind and understanding. "That's all right," he said gently. "You don't have to explain anything you're not ready to share. This is a safe place. That's all that matters." From that moment, she simply stayed, weaving herself into the daily rhythm of their lives. She became Bella, not the powerful CEO, but the woman who was hopeless in the kitchen. The first time she tried to chop an onion for dinner, she made such a messy, teary-eyed job of it that Elias had to gently take the knife and show her how, his work-roughened hand briefly guiding hers on the handle. His touch was careful and respectful, and a simple, warm feeling spread through her chest. Under his patient guidance, she gradually learned the rhythms of their small kitchen, finding joy in creating simple meals. Elias, in turn, found his own carefully guarded heart beginning to open. For 3 long years, since Sarah's passing, his world had been a monochrome of work and paternal duty. But Bella's laughter, her willingness to learn, and the light she brought to Lily's eyes painted color back into his life. He found himself falling in love, not with a dramatic flourish, but with a quiet, steady certainty, like a flower finally unfurling in the sun after a long winter. He began to share his world with her, the one he had built with so little but so much love. One evening, he took her to Mama Rosa's, a tiny family-run eatery with red checkered tablecloths and the most delicious, affordable pasta she had ever tasted. The laughter in the room was loud and real, not the polite titter of high society parties. He introduced her to his friends, Ben, the mechanic with grease perpetually under his fingernails, Sarah, the school teacher who talked with her hands, and David, the grocery clerk who knew everyone's name. They welcomed her without pretense, their genuine camaraderie and easy jokes intoxicating in their authenticity. In this simple, honest world, Bella felt the heavy cloak of her old life, the betrayals, the cutthroat negotiations, the constant suspicion slowly slip from her shoulders. Here, she was woven into the fabric of a family, her presence not a strategic advantage, but a wanted gift. She was no longer just a visitor. She was becoming a part of their story, and with each passing day, the broken pieces of her heart began to feel like they might finally heal. One quiet evening, with Lily safely tucked in bed, Elias led Bella into the small corner that served as his workshop. The space was cluttered with tools and half-fixed appliances, but he carefully cleared a space on the workbench. He looked at her almost shyly. "I have something I want to show you," he said, his voice low and earnest. I unrolled a large sheet of paper, its edges worn from handling. On it were intricate, hand-drawn blueprints filled with precise measurements and notes. The design showed simple but beautiful houses, cleverly designed to use sunlight and recycled materials. At the top, in his careful handwriting, were the words, "The Hearth, Sustainable Housing." "This is my dream," he explained, his calloused finger tracing the lines on the paper. "A way to build good, warm homes that ordinary people can actually afford." He spoke with a passion she had never heard in his voice before, his eyes lighting up as he explained the innovative systems. "I've been working on it for years, whenever I had a free moment." He paused, looking down at the blueprint with a mixture of hope and worry. "Actually, I took a chance. I submitted the proposal to Thorne Global last week. They're the biggest real estate company in the country. I'm just praying they'll see its value and respond. It feels like my last real hope of building a proper future for Lily." Bella looked at the detailed plans, her professional mind instantly recognizing the brilliance in the simple, efficient design. For a moment, she almost revealed everything, that she could ensure his proposal got the attention it deserved. But seeing the proud, hopeful look in his eyes, she remained silent. This was his dream, his achievement. "Elias, this is incredible," she whispered, truly meaning it. Any company would be lucky to have this design. Later that same night, Bella was reading a story to Lily before bed. The little girl was warm and sleepy, her small hand clutching Bella's fingers. As Bella closed the book and reached to turn off the lamp, Lily looked up at her eyes serious in the dim light. "Bella, my mommy is in heaven. She can't come back." She paused, her small fingers tightening around Bella's. "Please, can you be my new mom?" The words hung in the air, simple and profound. For a moment, Bella couldn't speak, her throat tight with emotion. The plea shattered the last of her defenses and simultaneously rebuilt something new and beautiful in its place. She saw the pure, hopeful love in Lily's eyes, a love that asked for nothing but her presence. She gathered the little girl into a warm hug, holding her close. "Oh, sweetheart," she murmured, her voice thick with tears she didn't try to hide. In that moment, any remaining distance between them vanished completely. Walking back into the living room, Bella saw Elias looking at them from the doorway, his own eyes suspiciously bright. He had heard everything. They sat together on the sofa, the silence between them comfortable and deep. Her mother, Sarah, passed away 3 years ago. It was sudden, an illness that came too fast. Since that day, it's just been the two of us trying to figure things out. He looked up at Bella, his expression open and vulnerable. "We managed. We had each other. But these last few days, with you here, it's like we didn't even know what was missing until you arrived. You filled spaces in this house, in our lives that have been empty and quiet for so long." Bella reached for his hand, and he took it, his strong, work-worn fingers wrapping around hers. No more words were needed. The love in the small house was now a tangible, warm thing that wrapped around all three of them, a new family, carefully woven together from threads of loss and hope, bound by a little girl's heartfelt wish and the quiet understanding that some voids are meant to be filled. One evening, as Elias was helping Lily with her homework at the kitchen table, the familiar sounds of their neighborhood were interrupted by a low, smooth purr. A sleek black car, so shiny it reflected the fading evening light, pulled up right outside their small house. It looked completely out of place on their modest street. A man stepped out, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit that cost more than Elias made in a month. Elias, assuming it was a wealthy client with a complex repair job, wiped his hands on his jeans and went to answer the door. "Mr. Elias Ovia?" the man asked, his voice crisp and formal. "Yes, that's me," Elias replied. "What can I fix for you?" The man offered a thin, professional smile. "I'm Robert Sterling, Chief Legal Counsel for Thorne Global." Elias's blood ran cold. His heart sank like a stone. This wasn't about a repair. This was about his blueprint. They had found him. Had he accidentally used a patented idea? Were they here to sue him for everything he didn't have? His dream was turning into a legal nightmare. But then, Robert Sterling's eyes shifted past Elias into the heart of the home. His entire demeanor transformed. The polished corporate mask shattered into pure, unvarnished shock. His eyes widened and his posture straightened even further, but now with a clear sense of stunned deference. Bella had just come from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a simple dish towel, wearing one of Elias's old sweaters. She froze when she saw the visitor. Robert Sterling found his voice, but it was now laced with disbelief. "Ms. Thorne!" he exclaimed, the name echoing in the small, humble living room like a gunshot. The word hung in the air, solid and heavy. Thorne. Elias stared at Bella, and in that single, earth-shattering moment, his entire world tilted on its axis, everything he thought he knew rearranging itself into a terrifying new picture.
The word hung in the air like a physical blow. Thorne. Elias stared at Bella, his mind reeling. The world tilted on its axis, and the small, familiar living room suddenly felt like a strange and foreign place. He could not believe his ears. He had been sharing his home, his meals, his life with the Isabella Thorne. The name was legendary, a symbol of immense wealth and power, constantly in the news. A billionaire. His thoughts raced, a jumble of confused memories. He saw her in his mind's eye, sitting at his chipped kitchen table, laughing at Mama Rosa's, patiently learning to chop vegetables with his hands guiding hers. He had taken her to local cheap places, introduced her to his simple friends, and she had never once acted like she was above it. She had seemed so genuine, so happy. How was this possible? How could a woman who owned skyscrapers seem so content in his tiny, peeling house? He looked at her now, standing there in his old sweater, and a wave of awe and disbelief washed over him. This incredibly powerful, important woman had chosen to live in his simple world. He felt a profound sense of unworthiness. Robert Sterling, recovering from the shock of seeing his powerful CEO in such a setting, cleared his throat and broke the tense silence. He held out a thick, formal envelope towards Elias. "We are here, Mr. Ovia, because we have reviewed your Hearth project. The board was astounded. It is truly revolutionary. Thorne Global wants to formally partner with you. This proposal offers you a 51% stake, valuing your initial design at $20 million. Elias felt the floor drop away from beneath him. The number was unimaginable. It was everything he had ever prayed for Lily's future. He looked from the life-changing contract to Bella, his eyes wide with overwhelming gratitude. Tears welled in his eyes and began to fall, but they were not tears of betrayal. They were tears of sheer, incomprehensible thankfulness. His voice was a choked whisper filled with emotion. You did this for me?" He looked at the woman he loved, seeing her in an entirely new, brilliant light. I don't know what to say. I am so grateful. I could never repay you for this kindness." He felt a sudden shyness, realizing the immense gap between their worlds. "I am sorry," he stammered, his voice full of humble respect. I didn't know who you were. If I had known, I would have treated you with the respect you deserve." Seeing his humility and the depth of his gratitude, Bella quickly stepped forward, her own eyes glistening. She reached out a hand to him. "No, Elias, please don't ever say that. You treated me perfectly. You treated me the way a woman should be treated, with kindness, with respect, with genuine care. The love I have felt in your humble home, it's something I never knew existed. It is beyond anything I could have ever imagined. You have nothing to apologize for."
Bella kept her gaze locked with his, her voice steady and sincere. "After you showed me your blueprint, I knew it was something special. I saw the genius in it, Elias. I saw the same man who fixes things to make them whole again, now trying to fix a bigger problem." She took a small step closer. "I sent the plans to my office, but I did it anonymously. I made sure no one knew they came from me. I wanted you to have this success because you earned it with your own mind and your own two hands, not because of who you know, not because of me." Her eyes never left his, unwavering in their honesty. "I never wanted to tell you who I was," she confessed softly. "I was afraid it would ruin this beautiful, simple thing we found. I was scared you would look at me differently. I came here that first night because a kind man saved a stranger. I stayed because I fell in love with you. I fell in love with Lily. I fell in love with the life you built. My name on paper is Isabella Thorne, but my heart is just Bella, the woman who loves you both." Elias listened, completely overwhelmed. A storm of emotions warred within him. First, there was a pure, soaring excitement that his dream, the hearth, was truly going to be built. It was a validation he had stopped hoping for. But that joy was tangled with the staggering reality of who Bella truly was. He looked at her, and he could no longer see just the woman who folded laundry with him. He saw a powerful, untouchable figure, and he couldn't imagine how he could ever treat her with the same easy, ordinary familiarity he once had. A deep-seated doubt whispered that he, a simple repairman, could never deserve a woman like her. Little Lily, who had been quietly watching the whole scene, broke the tension with the pure logic of a child. She tugged on her father's hand, her face bright with a happy smile. "See, Papa, I told you she was like a princess from a storybook. Perhaps she is an angel." Her innocent words made both adults smile through their emotional turmoil. Seeing Elias's continued struggle, Bella knew he needed time to process everything. "I think I should go now," she said gently, her heart aching at the newfound distance in his eyes. "But Elias, I want you to come to the Thorne Global offices tomorrow. There is so much more to discuss about the hearth. We can go over the partnership details properly." She offered him a hopeful look. "And I would really like to show you around. I want you to see my world, just as you so generously shared yours with me." Elias simply nodded, his mind still reeling. I'll be there," he managed to say. As Bella walked out the door, Elias stood in the middle of his living room, the multi-million-dollar contract feeling heavy in his hand. His dream had come true, but the woman who had made it possible now felt 1,000,000 miles away. He was left with a whirlwind of questions, the biggest one being whether their love could bridge the vast gap between his world and hers. The next morning, Elias dressed in his best pair of pants and a clean, ironed shirt. Stepping into the gleaming lobby of the Thorne Global office complex, he felt a wave of awe. The building soared above him, all glass and polished steel, a monument to the woman he thought he knew. He still couldn't reconcile the fact that the owner of all this slept in his modest bed and ate bean stew at his small table. Bella, waiting for him, didn't hide her excitement. Her face lit up the moment she saw him, and she rushed over, taking his hand in hers without a trace of self-consciousness. As she led him through the bustling offices, she kept her hand in his, making it clear to everyone, her staff, her executives, that this man was important to her. They discussed the hearth with a team of her best engineers, who treated Elias's ideas with deep respect. He was amazed by her sharp mind and her vast achievements. She was living the dream his own circumstances had denied him. In this environment, she seemed to glow with a new kind of confidence, and he thought she had never looked more beautiful. Before he left, she pressed a beautifully wrapped gift into his hands for Lily. "A car will come for you and Lily tomorrow at noon. I want to formally invite you both to my home. I want to share that part of my life with you." The ride home felt surreal. Elias was elated by the productive day and the team's enthusiasm for his project. The car, sleek and silent, felt alien as it pulled up to his familiar, humble street. He thanked the driver and stepped out, his mind still buzzing with plans and the memory of Bella's hand in his. Just as he reached his door, the low growl of a powerful engine made him turn. A luxurious, intimidating sports car, all sharp angles and gleaming paint, pulled up beside him. The window slid down to reveal a handsome, impeccably dressed man. His expression was one of cold amusement and contempt. "So," he said, his voice a smooth, mocking drawl, "this is where she's been hiding." He looked Elias up and down, from his simple shoes to the modest house behind him. "I'm Mike, Bella's ex. When I heard she'd found a new companion, I had to see for myself. I laughed and said, I'm disappointed in her. I knew she was hurting, but to stoop this low? Elias stood frozen, the day's joy draining away, replaced by a cold dread. Mike's eyes swept over the peeling paint and the small fenced yard. Look at you, he taunted. You're just a poor man living in what amounts to a slum. Do you really think you can fit into her world? You're a temporary distraction, a charity case. She'll get bored of playing house, and you'll be left right here where you belong. The words hit Elias with the force of physical blows, echoing his own deepest insecurities. He watched as Mike gave him one last pitying look before the window slid up and the expensive car purred away, leaving Elias standing alone in the fading light, the gift for Lily feeling heavy in his hand, and Mike's poisonous words ringing in his ears.
He finally forced himself to go inside, closing the door on the world as if he could shut out Mike's poisonous words. But they followed him in, slithering into his thoughts. He looked around his living room, the slightly frayed rug, the sofa with the indentation from years of use, the walls with their cheerful, peeling paint. For the first time, he didn't see a home filled with love and memory. He saw a slum. He saw the vast, impossible gap between his life and Bella's, a gap he had been foolishly ignoring. "You're just a poor man," Mike's voice rang in his ears, "a charity case." The conviction took root, cold and sharp. Of course, Mike was right. The business partnership, the excitement, the way she had held his hand, it was all just pity, a billionaire's guilt project. She was playing house, and he had been the willing, naive participant. The thought of going to her magnificent mansion tomorrow felt like an act of supreme arrogance. How could he, Elias Ovia, walk into that world and pretend he belonged? It was better to end it now, to spare them all the greater humiliation that was surely coming. The next morning, he was a ghost in his own home, moving silently through his routine. Lily, however, was a burst of sunshine. She had put on her best dress hours before they were due to leave, her small feet tapping with excitement. "Is it time yet, Papa?" she asked for the 10th time, her eyes shining with excitement. "I can't wait to see Bella's house." Elias knelt down, his heart cracking as he took her small hands. "Lilybug, we're not going." The light in her eyes vanished instantly, replaced by bewildered shock. "What? But why? She's expecting us. She promised." "I know, sweetheart, but sometimes things are more complicated than they seem," he said, his voice hollow. "We don't belong in her world." "That's not true," Lily cried, her small voice trembling as tears began to spill over. "She loves us. She told me. You're ruining everything." Her words, born of a child's pure hurt, felt like a physical blow. He was hurting her to protect her, but seeing her pain made him feel like the worst kind of failure. He was trapped, a prisoner of his own insecurities, believing this temporary heartbreak was kinder than the permanent one he was certain awaited them. Right at noon, a sleek, black car pulled up outside. Elias watched from behind the curtain, his stomach in knots. His phone vibrated on the table, Bella's name lighting up the screen. He watched it ring, each pulse a fresh ache in his chest. When it stopped, he picked it up and played the voicemail. "Elias, hi, it's Bella." Her voice was bright and happy, laced with excited confusion. "The driver says he's outside. Is everything okay? We're all so excited to have you and Lily here. Please call me back." He listened to the message twice, the hope in her voice twisting the knife of his guilt. He had taken her kindness, and now he was repaying it with silence. He put the phone down, the cheerful message ending, leaving only the sound of his daughter's soft crying from her room and the crushing silence of his own doubt. An hour after the missed appointment, a new car pulled up outside. This time, it was Bella herself at the wheel. She didn't wait for a driver. This was too important.
She walked to the familiar door and knocked, not with force, but with a persistent, hopeful rhythm. Inside, Elias felt every knock like a heartbeat. The guilt was a physical weight on his shoulders. Finally, he could bear it no longer and opened the door. Bella stood there, her face a mixture of concern, confusion, and unwavering determination. "Elias, what's wrong? Please talk to me," she pleaded softly. Just as he struggled to find the words that would push her away for her own good, the low growl of a familiar sports car interrupted them. Mike pulled up, stepping out with a smug, triumphant look, a bouquet of expensive flowers in his hand. He completely ignored Elias, his focus entirely on Bella. "Isabella, darling," he began, his voice dripping with false charm. "Seeing you here, it's made me see things clearly. I was a fool. I'm sorry for hurting you. We can fix this. Come back with me. We belong together, in our world. This is just a distraction." He gestured dismissively at Elias and the small house. For a moment, Bella was still. Then she stepped forward and her posture shifted. This was not the Bella who folded laundry. This was Isabella Thorne, CEO. Her gaze was icy, her voice calm but authoritative, cutting through the air. "You are not welcome here, Mike," she stated, her tone leaving no room for argument. "You represent a life of emptiness and betrayal, a world where everything, even love, is a transaction." She turned, and her expression softened as she looked at Elias and a now crying Lily who had come to the door. She gestured to them. "This is not a distraction. This is my life now. This is my family. Leave and do not return." Mike stared, his confidence shattered. The flowers hung limply at his side. With a final stunned look, he slunk back into his car and drove away, defeated. Then Bella turned back to them. She didn't enter the house immediately. Instead, she got down on one knee right there on the doorstep, taking both Elias and Lily's hands in hers. "This has never been about my empire," she said, her eyes locked on Elias's. "It's about our family. Elias, you built a palace out of hope and love right here, and that is the only wealth I will ever need. I don't want to just be your partner in business. I want to be your partner in life." Then she looked at Lily, her eyes shining with tears of love. "And Lily, if you'll still have me, there is nothing in this world I want more than to be your mother." Lily burst into fresh tears, this time of pure joy, throwing her arms around Bella's neck. "Yes, yes." Later, Bella brought them to her mansion. They walked through the grand halls and the beautiful, sprawling gardens. It was magnificent, but it felt empty compared to the warmth of their small home. Standing on a balcony overlooking the estate, she turned to Elias. "You know," she said softly, "once the hearth is built, you can design a home for us, a real home. It doesn't have to be here. It can be anywhere you want. We can live happily together, just the three of us." Elias looked from the breathtaking view to the two most important people in his world. He finally understood. It wasn't about choosing between a mansion or a modest house. It was about choosing the foundation your life was built on. And his foundation, their foundation, was love. He took Bella's hand and lifted Lily into his arms, the three of them united, a family forged in kindness and proven strong enough to bridge any divide.